The die is set, but Alberta ain't ready to kneel just yet. They chose their king, their power was met, but we don't answer to Ottawa yet. No crown gave us what we've earned, just dirt and fire and lessons learned. Now the ground it shakes, the steel it groans, and Alberta walks alone. We ride sovereign steel through fire, through frost. We ain't the last, we're the line they lost. Alberta stands, never on its knees. A nation born in the forge of the free. From the rigs to the rails, the crops to the code, we lit their streets, we bore their load. They laughed at pride, they mocked the West, but freedom don't die, it just waits for the test. The cowboys ride, the farmers rise, 5 million strong under open skies. No leash, no lie, no foreign throne.
Welcome. It's Brew Show. It's 7-Eleven Daily Summary. What an exciting time to be alive. We're out here in Springbank. We're just at the C3 Church. Live event, March 24th. This is StayFreeAlberta event. And we've got lots of people inside. I just wanted to say welcome. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for participating in the freedom of Alberta. It's a glorious evening, and I apologize for not being here as often as I'd like, but we are working on Alberta independence. That's obviously the main focus of our time here. Obviously, we need to spend our time and energy on Alberta and our independence from this sinking ship that they call Canada. Anyway, I'm out here in Springbank for a live event. Evening, how are you? All right, there's people rolling in here with the event with Mitch, Sylvestre, and we've got Jeff Rath on board as well. Should be a good group of people out. Hey, how are you? Yeah, nice to see you. Yeah. All right. Looks like a good group of people that are rolling in here, and we're hopefully talking to some of them. How's it going? All right, you guys, I'm guessing that you've probably been paying attention to the news. What the heck is going on in the world? We have now we have fuel shortages. They're shutting down fuel. Australia, apparently, they're saying that they may be out of fuel, so farmers aren't getting their crops. Farmers aren't getting their stuff to market. Grocery stores are running out of food. But we have other places like South Korea shutting down travel, shutting down the use of gasoline, things like that. Hey, do you have a second for a quick question? Okay.
Yes.
Alberta independence. Go for it.
Absolutely.
How are you doing this evening? Good. Good. Do you have a second for a question?
I'm not good at answering questions.
Okay. How about why you came out tonight, or what makes you want to be independent from Canada? Just a quick question. It's easy, simple.
Well, it's time to be responsible and not being dependent on Canada. We got to be independent and look after our own business.
Amen to that.
Enough of babysitting us.
Yeah.
When we know better.
Right.
Yeah.
like we should take care of our own people, our own resources, all that other stuff?
Everything. I'm
Yeah.
from the oil and gas, and definitely that's a big yes for separation.
Any idea what's going on today, like with fuel shortages, all of that sort of stuff? What's going
I
on?
just know that it went at $1.77 in our neighborhood.
Crazy, right?
It's crazy.
Yeah, and the price of oil I saw dropped like a rock today, but our prices of gas went through the roof.
Doesn't follow suit. No.
That's it. Anyway, thank you. God bless. Okay,
You too.
we'll see you inside. All right, let's go inside. It's a little bit chilly. I'm standing in my.
I was out there from Kansas.
Yeah.
It was chilly.
It was a little bit chilly. The wind is a little bit chilly. No kidding. Wow. Good group of people inside here. Evening. All right. Anyway, what is going on with oil prices today? A little bit through the roof. And obviously, I think that this is lockdown number 2. You're probably paying attention to what's going on. Ask this guy a question. Not you, because I know that you're camera shy.
I am camera. He's a really good guy.
Is he? Well, is he camera shy though? Or guys, do you mind if I ask you a question? Not you.
No, I'm just,
You're a flag waver, but you're not a camera guy.
I'm not a TV guy.
Because I was honking at you on the way in.
No, I'm not.
You're not a camera guy? Okay. Well, do you guys like Free Alberta at least?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll move on, and we won't ask them any questions. All right. Good group of people. This is awesome to see. Let's go check it out and see how many people are in here. Oh, yeah. Hey, how are you?
Best day of my life.
Yes, sir. Oh. We've got a good group of people out here tonight. We're going to be a little bit quiet. All right. Well, I wish he could be here. Hopefully he can. Hey. And if you're on your way, they haven't got started yet. It's supposed to start at 7 o'clock, so it's just 7 right now. And I know I started my show a little bit early just so that we could get going and get a chance to talk to some people. But we got some major things going on today in the world. It really feels, I don't know about you, but it really feels like a bit more of this lockdown nonsense where they're telling people that they should be working from home. Oh, that's good. Good group of people. Maybe I'll stand outside here, see if I can meet some more people.
All right, everybody, come on in, have a seat. You're in for some additional motivational traits and information, people that are close to what's
Maybe we'll go and listen in
and
tonight for a bit. Let's go listen in.
it's going to be great. So all of us are giving something to this. So you have a right to want to take the truth. Getting other things. Thanks, Travis. Go ahead. Yeah, I started the whole thing, and they're here tonight. They've been working at this and giving their life to it 24/7 plus. And I want you to welcome these guys and honor these people, because none of us would be here. None of us would be doing this if it hadn't been for the sacrifice of these leaders, these modern day heroes that get, attacked by all the media and the left-wing people, but they just keep going. And I'm so honored to know these guys. I respect them hugely, and you're in for a treat to get to hear from them and just appreciate their hearts. And some of you have been sitting for a while, so, Calgarians and generally Canadians are pretty crappy at standing ovations, but today we're going to change that. Would you welcome Mr. Jeffrey Rath? Jeffrey Rath, come on up, thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much. All right. Here we are, outside of Calgary on a Tuesday night. All right, how many canvassers are we got here tonight? Oh my God, look at that. I am so proud of all of you. I want to send my heartfelt thanks out to everybody that's registered to canvass. You are the heart and soul and backbone of everything we are doing. So before I get into my other remarks, one of the things that I wanted to put out to all the canvassers, I had a nice chat with David Parker today, right? So he's launched a new initiative that I would like all of you to please go check out. It's called the Centurion Project.ca. So when you get home, go to your computers, and all you have to do is type into your browser bar just the Centurion Project.ca. Centurion is spelled with an O. I misspelled it twice today. But anyway, the Centurion Project.ca. And what David has done is he's put together tools and a plan for every single canvasser that wants to put the effort in to get 1,000 signatures between now and the end of our campaign on the 2nd of May. So the tools are there, the program is there, the training is there. So if everybody that's out, busting their butts canvassing wants to improve what you're doing and set yourself a personal goal of another 1,000 signatures between now and the 2nd of May, or 2,000 or 3,000 or whatever you want to do, right? The tools are there for you to look at, and I urge all of you to go to the centurionproject.ca and take a look at the tools that David has created to help us reach our goal of absolutely crushing the numbers by the end of May. So, and again, all of the canvassers, thank you so much. Now, how many people here in the room have signed the petition? All right. Well, I'm preaching to the choir. So, for those of you that haven't yet, please consider the future of your kids and the future of our of the country of Alberta, and please go out and do it. If you're not convinced yet, hopefully what you're going to hear tonight will convince you to do that. So, in that regard, that's what I'd like to focus on tonight. Is a positive message about why it is that all of us as Albertans are going to be so much better off as a free and independent country than we would be remaining in Canada, right? So how many people here have read The Value of Freedom? Okay, not as many. Okay, so all of you that are interested in what we're doing, and it's going to help for all of our canvassers, it's going to help you when you're talking to people at the door, for people that are just interested in independence, in terms of a lot of the, the silly pushback we get from the other side. Oh, well, you're not going to be able to afford to do that on your own. You're not going to be able to afford a military. You're not going to be able to afford this, not going to be able to afford that, blah, blah, blah. That document lays out exactly how well off Albertans are going to be the day that Alberta leaves Canada, right? So, and again, that's the value. The document is entitled "The Value of Freedom: A Draft Fiscal Plan for a Free and for an Independent Alberta," and you can find it. You can download it for free at albertaprosperityproject.com. So please do that. Go to albertaprosperityproject.com and download The Value of Freedom. It's a free document. It's there. Print up a copy for yourself. Print up an extra copy, for neighbors or whatever, that you can share it with them, because that document clearly sets out how much better off we are going to be when we leave Canada to become a free and independent country. First thing, the day Alberta declares itself independent from Canada, we immediately vault from being part of a country that's the absolute bottom of the G7 for economic growth, for GDP per capita, et cetera, to the #1 country, not in the G7, but in the world for gross domestic product per capita. People need to internalize that. You know, leaving Canada is not going to be a very hard thing for Alberta to do, right? Economically, we are probably the only country, well, you know, the only province in Canada besides Saskatchewan that could leave Canada tomorrow and not have an issue economically when we leave. People need to internalize Alberta. Think about this for a second. People go, oh yeah, you're going to be able to afford that. How are you going to afford zero income tax? Well, Saudi Arabia has no income tax, right? And here's a fun statistic for everybody. Do you know that Alberta has more barrels of oil per capita than Saudi Arabia? Right? More barrels of oil per capita than Saudi Arabia. We're the #3 oil producing country in the world, Alberta is, right? And we have more barrels of oil per capita than Saudi Arabia or any of the countries in the Middle East. So let that sink in for a minute and think about how it is that we're constantly being told by Canada that our kids shouldn't be able to afford a house, that Canada can just keep printing money. I saw a slide today that just sent a chill up my spine. Every other first world country since COVID has curtailed money printing, so that all the money that they're printing through COVID to cover all their debt, it's all stopped. The United States has stopped, Denmark stopped, Germany stopped, Great Britain stopped, because they don't realize they're devaluing their currencies, right? And the only reason we haven't really noticed the devaluation of the Canadian currency in Canada is because what was going on is that as our country was printing money and devaluing our currency, all of the other countries that we trade with were devaluing their currencies at the same rate, right? So, the spread between the Canadian dollar and the US dollar remained constant. The spread between the Canadian dollar and the British pound, the euro, etc., remained constant because all of those countries were increasing what's called the M2 money supply at the same rate that Canada was, right? Well, now that all those other countries have realized they got to stop doing that because it's led to rampant inflation in all of those countries, and countries with responsible central banks like the US Federal Reserve, wherever, they realize now that they can't just keep printing money because it's going to just keep driving inflation. The only country in the G7 that has not curtailed the dilution of their M2 money supply is Canada. And this graph that I saw, it's parabolic in terms of the money printing that's going on in this country. So when you go to the grocery store and you realize that it seems like all of the groceries and everything that you buy for your family to survive costs twice as much as it did 5 years ago, it's not that everything costs twice as much. It's that because they doubled the money supply, your money is worth half as much, right? And they haven't stopped. It's on a parabolic curve. They're continuing to print money as a solution to all of this stupid spending that we see every week. There's some new announcement of another 30 billion here, another 10 billion for Ukraine there. Now there's a space program in Nova Scotia, and not to be mean to anybody from the Maritimes, but pretty hard to think that we're going to get people out of the trailer parks and off Okie to build a rocket ship, but that's the Liberal plan, right, going forward. And we all know that if you take $200 million and put it into a Canadian space program, there's a bunch of Liberals with a handout somewhere, behind that plan, and it's going to be like the money that gets spent on Trudeau's electric choo-choo train from Montreal to Toronto, or any of these, that stupid, Arrive scam app that they had for the airports where they spent hundreds of millions of dollars that went into the pockets of Liberal donors. It's all the same thing, and we're the ones that are expected to pay for it, right? So let's get back to the value of freedom. So I went off on a bit of a digression there, because that really didn't do anything today. And that's the thing. God bless Mark Birney. That's what I have to say. God bless that man, because every day he gives us a new reason for leaving Canada, right? Absolutely, every single day he gives us a new reason to leave Canada, whether it's rocket ships in Nova Scotia or doubling the money supply or whatever it is. Every day it's a new thing, right? But anyway, getting back to the value of freedom, focus on the fact when you read that document, we send as Albertans $70 billion a year to Ottawa. $70 billion a year we send to Ottawa. Okay. And that's in all the various federal taxes we pay, federal income tax, GST, carbon tax, all the stuff that we get that comes out of our pockets and goes to Ottawa, total $70 billion, including CPP and UI, and including CPP payments coming back to our seniors, unemployment insurance, coming back to people that paid into the program, health transfers, and then the questionable federal services we get. Out of that $70 billion a year that we send to Ottawa, we subsidize the rest of the country by $50 billion. Okay, so we get basically $20 billion a year back in direct transfers, CPP payments, UI payments, health transfers, and then, like I said, questionable services. Like, how many people here raise your hands if you believe that Canada actually has a national defense? Right? Like, I looked it up the other day. I think we have a total of less than 15,000 effective boots on the ground, actual troops. And here for me, I have nothing but respect for, members of the Canadian Armed Forces. The PPCLI is an example. I worked with them when I was a kid. One of the best light infantry regiments in the entire world. I would stack the PPCLI up against U.S. Army Rangers any day of the week, or any U.S. Special Forces, combat regiment. The PPCLI are among some of the best soldiers in the world, right? But let's just look at the numbers, right? 15,000 effective combat soldiers in the Canadian Army. The U.S. 101st Airborne Regiment alone has 18,000 men at arms in the Airborne Regiment, which is one of the most effective, air mobile light infantry regiments in the world, right? 82nd Airborne, same number, 10th Mountain Division, on and on and on. So all these idiots that go, well, if Alberta leaves Canada, you're going to be invaded by the U.S. It's like, okay, really? We're going to have that discussion? Seriously? It's like, if they wanted to take the entire country, they could do it in 48 hours, right? Without breaking a sweat. 10th Mountain Division, 1st Infantry Regiment, the Big Red One out of Fort Riley, Kansas. I mean, the United States literally has 50 times more men at arms, mobile regiments in North America, to Canada's 15,000 combat troops. So, and again, that was just sort of a CBC thing. Every week they come up with a new reason as to why we can't leave Canada. And I think that weekend, I don't know if anybody saw it, but that silly interview I had with Massey Capellos, where she was asking me whether I was afraid that Alberta was going to be taken over by the United States when we became independent. And of course, I just thought it was a silly question. I still do, right? And again, for those of you that have been paying attention to some of this, myself, Mitch, Dr. Modry, and I have all been down to meet with senior representatives of the U.S. State Department. They're not interested in taking over Alberta. First of all, legally, they can't do it, right? For Alberta to become a state, it would require a 2/3 vote in the U.S. Senate. The last thing that Democrats in the U.S. Senate want is another Republican state, right? And I mean, we were told that flat out by, by senior officials in the U.S. State Department. And they were saying if that were even be on the table politically, the GOP would have to agree to both Puerto Rico and Guam, or Puerto Rico, Guam, and a constitutional amendment for Washington, D.C. statehood, before they would allow Alberta to join the United States in any way whatsoever, right? It's just a non-starter. So again, and I think all of us, when I see how many people have signed the petition, I see how many canvassers we have in the room, we all know that this movement is not about joining the United States, right? Yeah. And we all know that what we are doing is creating a country. We are all working together to create a free and independent country called Alberta, right? And that's what we're working forward to do. And again, think about that on a going forward basis, right? We have all of these, people that are going, oh, yeah, well, Alberta independence is never going to work. It's like, well, wait a minute. Not only is it going to work, but in year one, so we vote ourselves out of Canada this fall, 2027 could be the first year in all of our lives where we don't have to pay any federal income tax. Mm-hmm. Think about that. My favorite thing about that is that apparently for some reason, and I think largely because of my weight right now, but I'm working on that, the people at this hour is 22 minutes always like making fun of me, right? And they had that pudgy guy that looks a little bit like Jason Kenney on a couple weeks ago. Oh, the Jeff Rath guy, he can't do any math. He says there'll be no income tax after federal income tax after Alberta leaves Canada. Doesn't he know that Alberta pays $15 billion a year in federal income tax? To which my response is, dumbass, don't you know that Alberta contributes $15 billion a year to Quebec in equalization? Right? We just get rid of $15 billion a year in equalization to Quebec, and we can easily afford to eliminate the entire federal income tax portion on everybody in this room's pay stub. Whoa. Right? So think about that, right? Think about, and when you're talking to people, talk to them about that, right? You know, if you've got, you know, people like frontline workers, you know, nurses, police officers, firemen, you know, nurses' aides, LPNs, you know, anybody that gets a paycheck, right? Tell them when they go home to take a red pen and circle the amount of federal income tax that they pay on their tax. We're not saying no income tax. I mean, it's still, you know, we have to keep the provincial government, you know, going at some level, whatever. But just the federal income tax portion on their paycheck, right? So for the average couple, right? Say you make $15,000 a year. You know, you make $100,000 a year as a, you know, second or third year police constable. You're making, you know, $150,000 a year as a 4 or 5 year RN, right? Between the two of them, right, year one of independence, right, they have an increase of over $50,000 a year in family take-home pay as a result of Alberta independence. I mean, think about that, right? You know, and that's going to be, you know, that's going to be the election. That's going to be the referendum campaign. I had Dennis Kalma, who was running all the AI and doing all the, you know, doing all the numbers for us on the Value of Freedom project. And I asked him, I said, Dennis, I said, I want you to run some numbers for me because this is the campaign that I want to run for the referendum. And this is what I want to focus on for the referendum going forward, right? Running the numbers through the Value of Freedom economic model, right? Would we be able to afford in year one, right? Zero income tax, zero federal income tax, and afford to double CPP and OAS for senior citizens in Alberta? Right? And the answer that I got from Dennis running the models, he's a very serious, you know, very serious, conscientious guy. He actually, his background, and when he fell into my lap and I never recruited him for that project, I was just rubbing my hands with glee. He used to do all of the big business planning for CP Rail. So all their projects over $100 million, Dennis would run all the numbers for and do all the business planning on and all the rest of it, right? So, you know, he knows how to run numbers on, you know, on large projects like that. So he very seriously took my question about whether or not we could afford zero federal income tax and doubling CPP and OAS in year one of independence. And the answer he came back with was, not only could we do that, that we'd be able to do that, but we would still be able to afford all of the additional services that Alberta would have to pick up in a post-independence world, like $1.5 billion startup cost for an Alberta Army, 3% of GDP thereafter to maintain an Alberta Armed Forces, you know, immigration, and as I like to say, immigration and deportation department. You know, immigration and deportation department, airports, Alberta's new national parks, Banff, Jasper, Waterton, etc. You know, where Alberta's going to have to be taking those over and operating them themselves. You know, all the various federal programs and services that Alberta will be taking over, and eliminating federal income tax and doubling CPP and OAS payments to seniors, we would still have a $10 to $15 billion a year fiscal capacity surplus after paying for everything we need to pay for, eliminating income tax and doubling CPP and OAS in year one of independence. Like, the numbers completely work, right? And that's why I want people to read the document and look at the document. You know, you can see the numbers the way we ran them the first time. And what I want everybody to understand is that numbers in that document are extremely conservative, okay? We did that intentionally. Like, through this process, I've gotten to know Paul St-Pierre Plamondon fairly well. You know, we had a lot in common. We're both, you know, both lawyers. We both trained in England. We both, you know, worked at big firms at one point in our career, et cetera. So he and I have kind of become, you know, friends over the last year or so. And he was telling me that he had the economists in the Parti Québécois, which he leads, run the numbers in the value of freedom document. And he says, well, Jeff, he says, we ran the numbers. He says, the numbers you guys are putting out in terms of your fiscal capacity surplus and how well off you're going to be, they're extremely conservative. And I said, well, Paul, I said, we're Albertans. We always tend to under promise and over deliver, right? It's a cultural thing, right? But that's the whole point. Like, if you think about it, okay, so we have $70 billion a year disappear from this province into the clutches of corrupt liberals in Ottawa every year, okay? So that's $70 billion, right? And of which, you know, we only really get 10 billion back in cash, right? That, imagine what the economy of Alberta would look like and how this
Sorry, guys, the phone heated, and I had to step away to try and cool the phone. So bear with me here.
Because the simple fact of the matter is, everybody who understands anything about economics understands how that amount of money stay in Alberta and not be wasted on people schemes, whether it's going to be sent money to Ukraine. How many people, $69 billion a year went to Ukraine, right? Which is a black hole of corruption. Right? It's one of the most corrupt countries in the world. Vladimir Zelensky, now, went from being, basically a broke, television comedian that didn't have, $10 to rub together, now owns ski resorts, yachts, multiple homes, properties in Florida, et cetera, right? As a result of all of the money that's been, filtered, funneled into the Ukraine, right? So how many people here think, given what we know about the government in Ottawa and how corrupt liberal politicians are and politicians in Ottawa are, how many people think we could send $69 billion into a black box in the Ukraine that's not subject to investigation by the RCMP, not subject to audits by the Auditor General, where nobody can see where the money goes once it goes into that black box, right? How many people here actually believe that none of that money has ended up in an offshore bank account associated to either a Liberal member of Parliament or some member, senior donor or a member of the Liberal Party of Canada in a way that we can't trace or find out? How many people actually think that that didn't happen? Anybody? Right? No, I mean, and we won't have to put up with that anymore. The other benefit of a free and independent Alberta, besides, massive economic upside, is this is an amazing project that we're working on together. Think about that. All of us together collectively, we're inventing a new country. I mean, how many of us when we were kids thought, hey, when I grow up, I gotta make a new country, right? It's pretty cool, right? So we're inventing a new country. We're making a new country together, right? And when we make that new country together, we get to make our own constitution, right? Get rid of that corrupt Westminster system of governance that effectively allows, politicians to run unchecked, unstoppable, with all of the power of his sovereign majesty through the prime minister's office, 4 years at a time. And even as we found out under Trudeau and now under Carney, even minority governments can exercise that power without any ability of the opposition to stop them, right? So we can invent a new constitution that says, first of all, right, we're not going to have a House of Commons anymore, or a single legislative assembly anymore. We'll have an elected legislature based on the population. Then, for those of us that live in rural Alberta and don't like city folk telling us what to do, we're going to have a Senate that's based on regions of the province, right? Where each region will get 2 senators, right? And the cities are just going to be part of a region. So, they'll have more votes on the population side in the legislature. But as far as the Senate goes, the Senate will be based on regions of the population, and whatever regions the cities happen to be in, they get their 2 senators, same as everybody else. So it's like the same number of senators as well, right? Then the other thing is we'll have an elected executive, right? I don't care what we call it, whether it's a president, whether, for those, monarchists that still want to hang on to King Chuck, if they want to, instead of having a president, we have a prime minister, and then, appoint, elevate the lieutenant governor to governor general, whatever. That's for the constitutional conference. All of y'all can decide. I'll have 1 vote, same as everybody else. I don't care however we do it, as long as we have real checks and balances and the ability, most importantly, to do what a lot of U.S. states have done, but actually write it hardcore into the Constitution, where we have an elected attorney general who's not a member of the cabinet and beholden to the premier or prime minister, right? And more importantly, an elected auditor general, right, who are tasked specifically with putting crooked politicians in jail. All of that is within our power. And constitutionally, we can limit the spending power of government. We can make it, so that there will be strict limits on the amount of debt that can be taken in. There will be strict limits on the ability of government to print money. We'll have real currency based on real commodities and real value, with no ability to create a fiat currency where you can just run printing presses. And literally, every time, get back to that M2 money supply thing, when they print money like that, they're literally, it's not even taxation, it's a form of theft. They are literally depreciating every dollar in your bank account. They are depreciating the value of the equity in your home. They're depreciating the value of every stock, bond, and investment you have in your RRSPs through money printing, right? I mean, it's so bad. And if you go to my X feed and take a look at it, I reposted a chart that somebody else posted. I was talking to a friend today. It's like, boy, if you're going to be money in Canadian right now, you really want to start thinking about moving it all into U.S. funds or Swiss francs or some other currency, because the way this is going, another 5 years from now, your Canadian dollars are going to be worth half of what they are, regardless of whether Alberta leaves Canada. And you keep in mind too, Alberta leaves Canada, the Canadian dollar will be trading on par with the Polish zloty, right? Because we are the heart and soul and the economy of Canada, right? They can't get away with the things that they've been getting away with without us. And it's time that we stop supporting all of the corruption that has been going on and that we have been living under, and force the rest of them to sort themselves out. And I think in that way, the entire exercise of Alberta independence, we're actually doing Canada, the rest of Canada, and the rest of our fellow Canadians, we're doing them a huge favor. Because the only way, and I'll tell you this as a constitutional lawyer, the only way to reopen the Canadian Constitution so that there can be regional balance reapplied, and so that a lot of the issues that that have come to the fore with the Canadian Constitution in this country, the only way to fix the Canadian Constitution now, because the amending formula doesn't work, right, is impossible. The only way to amend the Canadian Constitution is for a province to leave Canada, right? So by doing this, we're doing the rest of Canada a massive favor, and they can fix themselves. you know, they have an opportunity, you know, to reestablish sound money. They have an opportunity to reestablish, you know, a sound, you know, fiscal program on a going forward basis. The good news for us is we are not going to pay for it, right? So with that, I just want to thank you all again from the bottom of my heart. Again, for all of our canvassers, go to the centurionproject.ca. There's some really, really valuable tools there to help all of you, you know, get to, you know, a couple thousand signatures by the 2nd of May. And again, I just want to tell you all what an honor and what a pleasure and what a privilege it is to be able to work alongside of you to create a new country and create a free and independent Alberta. Thank you so much.
That guy's good. Next up is the person who put his name on the petition. He is the proponent. He's the one that all the roads come back to him. And he's an independent businessman. He's got a brand new truck that's almost burned out now because he's put so many miles on the thing. His wife is at home helping with coordinating all the coming together with the signatures across the province. I don't know how he does it. I just pray he never gets sick because I don't know how he keeps going like he does. And you know who I'm talking about. Let's welcome Mitch Sylvestre.
Now, okay, can you get me to the slide that says, go to box or I can't use my clip. I'll get you to override. Keep going.
How are you? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I want your stuff.
You said that the British government should be the last place we lost. I'm going to start with that. So if you did not think that we need to leave here after a comment like that, well, that's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. And you know what concerns me about that? Really, when I think about it all the time, like how can he try harder to keep this up? I mean, I just don't understand what else they could possibly do. And I'm going to get into it for an hour or 20 minutes, trying to understand why I should be concerned that actually maybe we're the useful idiots and we're going to move them out of the situation. You want to go back on that this other way. Yeah, keep going the other way. Perfect. Perfect. All right, I'm going to need you to change my slides for me currently. Keep going. Keep going the other way. You're doing good. Perfect. Keep going. No. We're getting there. All right, more even. Well, let's talk about it. Keep going. Keep going. All right, we're good here now. You see a white box with that? Go one more. Back to it. All right, we're going to be there. Oh, wait. I'm going the wrong way. All right, get there. One more, a couple more. Keep going. I just took that one out today, that one too. That one too. Keep going. All right, there you go. kindly demands Supreme Court strip provinces of right to pass their own laws. How does that sound? What do you think our premier's thinking, right? And apparently, he's been working with the Supreme Court to do this. How is that going? So he's working with the Supreme Court to disallow our elected officials from making laws. And actually, that kind of flips backwards for me. Our Supreme Court should be working to stop them from making laws, as far as I'm personally concerned. Next slide, please. Do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada to become an independent state? So the only way that happens is if we continue to work as hard as we're working, because the message that we're going to share here today is basically what's wrong with Canada. What I'm talking to you about today is why we cannot reconcile with these people and why we have no other alternative but to move the other way. And I wasn't that person. I did an interview this afternoon with the National Post. He said, so when did you get involved in politics? I said, well, when we lost the last federal election. Really? That was when I understood that we're never going to get another conservative government in this country. And at that point, I was sure that I didn't want to be ruled by liberals forever because, according to everybody in the room, I walked in and Keith Wilson said, sorry, we're different. And we are. Our 37 seats, 34, 35 conservative. We're not happy with the government. We're not happy with policies. We're not happy with and I hope that she wrote that very well was the difference between producers and gatekeepers. These people that are affecting our lives can't produce anything. We're producers, we're showers of the ground, we create wealth from the ground here. We're the people that can get the oil on the ground, we're the people that can sell it, we're the people that farm, we're the people that grow crops, we're the people that raise all the food. And they're spending all their time at work. And they're spending all their time figuring out ways of how they can steal our money. That's what I'm really not used to you.
Sure.
We've been calling since 1904.
Yeah, just
And we're still calling.
sure. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Greg, you're okay with that? All right. I won't shoot that one. All right. There is the one and only Jeff. And so shut this guy off so I can go to the bathroom.
Well, thank you for sparing me.
Oh, God. All right. I'm going to get you to hang on to that.
Sure. There we go.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. So, Jeff, one of the things that I've been wondering, and I'm sure that Canadians and Albertans are wondering the same thing. So, you have shown an immense, I don't know what it is, but this energy that comes out of you. So, what is it? Military? Is it? Can you describe what it is? Because I know what
for me,
what some
it's
people...
excitement. I'm just really, really excited about Alberta becoming a free and independent country and getting our entire families out from underneath all of the oppression that we live under every day in Ottawa. I mean, we either all work together to fix Alberta or we all have to leave. But I don't want to leave. This is my home. I'm a fifth generation Albertan. So I'm going to do what Albertans always do. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and I'm going to work my ass off until I get the job done.
So one of the questions that I try to get from a lot of people is, what is it? Like, what triggered you? Because
I've answered this question before, and I think all these people that don't like some of the things that I say from time to time. Oh, Jeff Rath, that massive ego of his, he's just an egotistical, blah blah blah. Well, I kind of have to cop to that because I'll tell you how it is that I got involved in the Alberta independence movement, and it was during COVID, right? And Justin Trudeau basically told us, in the face of all of the science to the contrary, that unvaccinated people were dirty, infectious, cretins who were not allowed on airplanes anymore because we weren't allowed to sit next to these good, pristine, vaccinated people who are actually the ones driving COVID and driving the pandemic, because all of them thought once they get the shot, because they've been lied to, that it stops transmission and it keeps them from getting COVID, right? They're all running around sneezing and snotting and coughing on people because they all think that they're immune from COVID and whatever, right? So anyway, Trudeau says to me that, or all of us, that if you're a filthy, dirty, unvaccinated person, you can't get on a plane anymore. So I can't fly to Palm Springs to go golfing with my buddies. I can't get on a plane to go visit my clients. I can't do all the stuff that I'm normally able to do. All of my charter mobility rights have been completely erased by the dictates of a drama school dropout by the name of Justin Trudeau in the name of his fake science, right? So I literally turned to a buddy of mine one day and I said, you know what, I'm just sick and tired of this BS. I said, if Trudeau won't let me leave Alberta, I'm just going to pick up my entire province and leave Canada, right? And I've literally been working on trying to get Alberta out of Canada ever since, because I just can't live like that. I mean, how can you live in a country where, a moron just arbitrarily decides that you're not allowed to get on an airplane anymore for no good reason, right? Treating us like children. I mean, we're not children. We're adults. We're the most productive people in the country, right?
So was it one of those events where he was at like George Chahal, and he said in front of Calgary that you're not allowed to travel, or was it?
No, it was just one of his stupid interviews somewhere along the line, right? Well, no, they actually passed federal regulations. They literally said that you're not allowed to get on federal transportation, so you couldn't get on ferries anymore. So I had a place on the west coast at the time, in the Gulf Islands, so I couldn't take a ferry, get on a ferry anymore because I wasn't vaccinated. I couldn't get on an airplane anymore. Couldn't get on I don't take trains as a matter of course, but interprovincial transportation, we were prohibited from doing any of that unless we had a vaccine pass. And I know for a fact that lots of people in this country were getting phony, vaccine certificates. And I mean, I was even offered to them, for good money. Somebody offered me, said, "Oh yeah, well for $3,500, I can put you together with the trainer for an NHL hockey team who will remain nameless, and he'll just shoot the COVID shot into the sink and then write down the lot number and say that you're vaccinated." And I said, no, I can't do that. I'm a member of the Law Society. And I said, the minute, if the Law Society ever found out that I was traveling the world on phony vax papers, I'd lose my law license in a second. So I said, that's not happening. But interesting to know that entire hockey team is unvaccinated. Right?
Wow.
Oh, no, I know. It's, but I mean, that's the world we lived in during COVID, right? And, it was ridiculous. So, I mean, I just, at that point, it was a real, not an epiphany, because I've been fighting the Canadian government my entire life. But when you can see the entire government becoming that institutionally evil, stupid, corrupt, backward, and ridiculous, I'm going, I can't be governed under this system anymore. I'm just gonna have to do everything I can, to save myself and to save my fellow citizens from any more of this ridiculousness. And I've been working for Alberta independence ever since.
Mitch just brought up a slide, and it was just in the news, I think it was yesterday, maybe, where the Supreme Court's now working to eliminate our ability to make laws.
Well, no. The government's of Alberta's ability to utilize the notwithstanding clause,
is that what it is? Okay.
In the face of legislation that they want to pass that might infringe the rights of citizens, right? And I have to say, as a constitutionalist and somebody who believes in people's constitutionally protected rights, I don't like governments to be able to invoke the notwithstanding clause and to say, okay, well, it's all well and good that you have these charter rights, but we're going to take them away from you because I've decided to, and all I have to do is invoke the notwithstanding clause. I don't like the notwithstanding clause. But that having been said, right, the very deal that created the Canadian Constitution Act of 1982, right, was predicated on that clause being negotiated into that agreement. So if the Supreme Court is to say that the notwithstanding clause should not apply anymore, and that Trudeau Liberal, Carney Liberal appointed judges can now just make up the law as they go, that's a real concern for me as well, right? Because these judges are unaccountable. They're politically appointed. and I hate to say it, and I have to be careful because I'm a barrister and I work within the court, so I have to be respectful, of the courts and the judges. But quite often, some of these justices wear their political biases on their sleeve. And, why shouldn't the government of Alberta have a greater say in which of these judges get appointed? Why shouldn't, why should judges be the ones to decide, what the law is? That's the job of the legislature. So, everybody in the legal profession is watching that case with a huge amount of interest, because if the Supreme Court effectively rules to limit the notwithstanding clause in a way that was never understood by the framers of the 82 Constitution, effectively the Supreme Court is going to be telling everyone in this country, we are the boss of you. Right. The Constitution be damned, right? We will, the legislatures be damned, Parliament be damned. We will make the law, right, as we see fit, being, appointed, not elected to our position. So I think the court's putting itself in a very dangerous position if it, if it grants Carney what he's asking for.
Well, my last question to you was in regards to the Constitution. So we've seen you and many others fighting against the government and their constitutional challenges as far as COVID and all of the other things that happened. Is there a chance that we can actually rectify the Constitution as far as Canada is concerned? I know that we're leaving, but we still have to deal with it for
not for very much longer, right? So and that's the good news. And the other thing is too, and I was just talking about that earlier in my remarks. If Alberta leaves, or when Alberta leaves, we're doing the rest of the country a favor. Yes. Because the way the amending formula is now set up, right, the Constitution is virtually unamendable. But the Supreme Court has said clearly in the secession reference that if a province wants to leave, right, the rest of the country has to negotiate in good faith. And if they don't negotiate in good faith, it then opens the door to the province to unilaterally declare independence, right? Which, I suspect is the route we're going to end up having to go down, because I do not expect the Carney Liberals or any Liberal government in Ottawa to negotiate in good faith, right, with regard to Alberta leaving Canada when we win the referendum. So, we're on a path, right? So, it's interesting.
Okay, so one more question. You actually just made me think about this. So, if they don't negotiate in good faith, what's the timeline look like? Do we say that there's a certain amount of time? It's 3 months, or
I would say
what does that look like?
3 to 6 months. Why? This isn't gonna, for me, it shouldn't be a multi-year process.
Sure.
It's like, this is, here's our proposal. You
rip the Band-Aid off, right?
Yeah, you give us our proposal. We'll decide whether you're being reasonable about this. We have no intention of delaying. We have no intention of engaging in, multi-year litigation with you over any of this stuff. We don't want any of this litigated by Canadian courts. My view is that, that this now, given the bias of, Canadian judges towards Canada, it should be, any dispute should be arbitrated by, the Court of International Arbitration in The Hague, or some international body that, that doesn't have a dog in the hunt, right? But I guess all of that remains to be seen. But from my perspective, we need to get this done, sooner rather than later. And I think people are going to be shocked at the speed with which Alberta is going to leave Canada. Because I don't think, if when a majority of Albertans turn out to vote ourselves out of Canada, we're not going to be tolerating a government in Edmonton that isn't prepared to roll up their sleeves and get us out of Canada sooner rather than later.
Oh, that's awesome. That's exciting to hear.
Yeah,
thank you so much.
It's an exciting project. We're creating a new country together. How great is that?
It's the best.
Right?
It's the best. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, I appreciate it. Oh, Jeff Rath, thank you so much for being here. Okay. You guys, that was amazing, right? Oh, how exciting is that? Oh, geez, what the hell? Who else is excited about that? That was an amazing opportunity to talk to Jeff Rath and get a fill in on our journey to freedom. So that is very, very exciting. All right. So Mitch is speaking right now. Let's just go in and listen a little bit more. We'll see how that goes.
They make it 6 months, and then take 6 months off before you. When my brother went to play junior hockey in Quebec, the whole team was gone. The whole team. And I was accepted. All right, so That $3 million for a PPP Act, which was brought in by Ontario. Ontario said, we don't want to pay too much. And if we pay too much, we want to pay for everybody else. We want that money to go in a fund for Ontario seniors. And we should be able to call that fund back with accumulated interest if you want to do so. So District Kennedy, before we fired him, I should commission the Lighthouse report. I believe that's the only good thing he did. But however, the report says that that overage plus interest is $330 billion, which that fund owes Alberta seniors. Now, if that fund was here, and we're talking about doubling the pension, and that's been 2 years, so now they owe us $400 billion actually, according to their interest rates, what they claim they're getting. So let's just break that down. Let's lose $400 billion that they owe us. 10% interest is actually 9.5. Our workers contribute 9. Our students collect. Sorry, guys. So we have $49 billion in income, $6 billion expenditure, and that's pensioners' money. We can afford to give our old age a 5-fold to 6-fold increase in pension and not even touch the principal. And we could take that $400 billion and invest it in Alberta, which they do not do now, and that's another thing. Why do they not invest Canada Pension in Alberta? Because we have dirty oil. You see, they don't do that. And just understand this as well. Half of that money is actually belongs to Alberta. Next. But they'll take $100 billion of our money and invest it in India. And half of that is ours. Does anybody in the room believe that we'll actually see that money back? Okay, so that could build a pipeline to the West Coast. And if that was the case, it would increase our net take yearly by $25 billion. And that could build a serious LNG producing plant and a pipeline to Rupert as well. And that would also produce lots of money. Because you remember when Germany and Japan came to Canada and said, hey, would you sell us liquid natural gas? And our Prime Minister said, no, we can't. Because it's not in our business plan. Right? That's quote. You can go back and find it. Next slide. All right, so here's the problem. It's a very simple problem. When I became premier, I thought I could fix everything in 6 or 7 months, but everything's broken. So I'm going to give you a couple cute stories about the elected. I said, what do you think, Mr. Carter? She said, you first. I thought that was kind of cute. And the other part of it is that I said, okay, well then, since we're having fun, who in the room wants a free and independent Alberta? 800 people in the room, not handpicked friends of mine, just so you know. 100%. 800 out of 8. So Putin said, okay, well, you know what? How many of you would like us to at least give Canada another try? Nobody. Not one person. And then she said, well, come on, I know you're intimidated by everybody else in the room, but someone must feel that way. Crickets. See, the problem with that is what she's saying is that the reason it can't be fixed is because everything's broken. Everything's too corrupt to fix. She was referring to specifically with AHS when she came in with a big promise of getting it fixed. And then she's looking up. Alberta is the richest base real estate in the world. Saskatchewan's right beside us, same situation. You have to be naive to believe, and they're coming for it. And that's the problem. We have to protect it or we're going to lose it. China does not have anywhere near what we have here in resources. And I'll be very clear how much we actually have before I run this presentation. Europe has nothing. Are going to try. And historically, these people that we're discussing, both of these countries, both of these parts of the world, have historically raped nations and stolen trillions of dollars worth of their wealth. And here's the thing. We go through this stuff.
Sorry, everybody. The camera is over here. I'm back. And I think I'm gonna. Oh, sorry, Greg. We're just gonna end off this broadcast. Thank you so much for being here. What an amazing night. Another great group of people. Another great group of people here fighting for Alberta independence. I'm gonna head outside here. Wow, look at the light. All right, you guys got to get out there and do your thing. Make sure you're signing the petition if you haven't already done it. Get out there. We've got to get this done as soon as possible. We've got to get as many names as we can get on that petition. We need that petition to be, oh gosh, you know what? Let's hope that we can get 1 million. Get your friends and your family if they haven't already done it. And if they're on the fence, you can tell them, you can talk to them about the our ability to get Ottawa to understand what we're up to. Even if you don't want to separate, you don't necessarily know that you want to be independent Alberta. Look at what's happening in the world as well. And I talked about this a little bit before we got into the event, but South Korea, Australia, India, take a look at the lineups of the fear mongering in regard to the lack of gasoline, diesel, all around the world. It looks like COVID 2.0. You guys, this is our opportunity. We're going to create the greatest magnet for business, for people, for freedom, and people will be clamoring to get into Alberta. And I do appreciate you guys and participating in this most amazing experiment that we call building a nation of Alberta. And I look forward to being here and doing the broadcasts again on a regular basis. I miss doing it, and I miss talking to, some of the amazing people that I get a chance to talk to. Everyday Albertans, those are the people that really amaze me. The people that are out there getting the signatures and during the snow, during the wind and the rain. They're putting themselves out there as well. There's a lot of lunatics that are out there and making things difficult. So we are going to have an uphill battle. There's going to be a lot more that we're going to have to deal with. And hats off to you. I am just really, really amazed at the tenacity and the stick-to-itiveness of Albertans. You're strong and you're resilient, and God bless all of you. Anyway, this is Bruce Scholl. This has been amazing. This has been an awesome night with you. And like I always say, let's keep your head on a swivel. Let's stay sane together. This is Bruce, and I'm out of here. Thank you so much for watching Unscrew the News. I appreciate your participation in freedom in Canada. Share this information and help others to wake up. God bless.